Hi everyone, my name's Dahlia. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to do a wrap up of all the books that I read in May, which was last month. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. So the first three, I would say two books that I read in May, because technically I read the first one in April. But I read the Grisha Trilogy in May, mostly, again, except for Shadow and Bone, which I read back in April. But I did do a book talk about the first book, Shadow and Bone. If you want to go watch it, I'll leave a link for it. And this is basically a high fantasy series that is inspired by Russia. And it follows the main character. Her name's Alina, and in this world there are Grisha, which are people with powers, and they're basically, very valued in this country. And Alina and her best friend serve in, I think it's the first army, where basically they're ordinary people, and they fight, they participate in the army. Alina is like a map maker, Mal is a tracker. So they have their own roles in this army, but there are wars along the borders, as Ravka, this country, is bordered by other countries that they are currently at war with. And so one day Alina discovers that she has powers that she never realized she had, and obviously her life changes for pretty much for good. And so this trilogy follows her journey about her powers and all this stuff that's going on in this world. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And I enjoyed this series. I thought it was okay. I would say it was a solid 3 stars all around. If you want to hear my full thoughts about the first book, again, I could leave a link. I go into more detail about what I liked and what I didn't like about the books, because I feel like there was stuff missing where it could have been better. But overall, it wasn't a bad read, and yeah. And as you can see, it's part of the Grishaverse, where the Six of Crows duology also takes place in. But I believe that comes at a much later date than the timeline of these books. But I haven't read those, so yeah. And then the next book that I read in May is The World Falls Away by Wanda Coleman. And Wanda Coleman was a black poet and writer from Los Angeles, but she passed away a little time ago, sadly. But this is a collection of her poems, and it's just so good. I read it little by little throughout the month, and I just loved her work. It really inspired me to write some of my own poems, and kind of like in the style of Wanda Coleman, because she has this way with words and language that is so beautiful. And yeah, so if you're looking for a book of poems to read, I would highly recommend The World Falls Away. Yeah. And then the next 5 books I read were in a series, and this is a Throne of Glass series. Now, the first 3, Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight, and Heir of Fire, were all rereads for me, because I reread them back in 2015, I think right before Queen of Shadows came out. So at that time, I stopped at Heir of Fire, obviously, because I couldn't continue on as the next books were out. And at the time, I really, really enjoyed these series. When Queen of Shadows came out and then Empire of Storms, I never picked those books up, because I started hearing about all the problems that these books had, and now rereading them, I really recognize and see them. I am really invested in the story, and I really, really do love these books. So I do want to finish off with the series when the 6th book comes out next year. But I wouldn't say I want to recommend them, just because when I was reading them, there are a lot of things that I found were really actually quite shocking, such as characters of color being written off or killed off in ways that promote the story of the white characters, bisexuality being thrown in as a character trait that's kind of written in this very slutty trope, and there's a bunch of other things, but those are just a couple. And it's kind of like, I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of the way that was handled. And so, yeah, but I am very invested in these books, so I'm going to see the series to its end, and that will be it. But yeah, and so I picked up Queen of Shadows and Empire of Storms a little while ago, but again, I was kind of hesitant to continue on with the series, but then I did, and I enjoyed them. Again, there's things that I did have a problem with, but yeah, I'm thinking of making a video of like problematic books that I've actually enjoyed and discussing why they're problematic, because I know like when people bring it up, other people question why are these books problematic, because sometimes that's not really gone into detail. Like some booktubers just say, oh, they're problematic, and then they brush it off and continue talking. And then other people say, you know, if it's so problematic, and obviously Sarah is so far into her writing career and there has been no changes in her books whatsoever with what she does, why do you continue reading her? But yeah, as I said, I'm very invested in this series. I have been since 2015, before I started recognizing all this, and so I just wanted to put that out there and be honest and admit that yes, I do love these books, and yes, I recognize the problems, and again, I'm considering about doing a separate video for that. We'll see. And then the last book that I read this month, I don't have a physical copy of, but I did a review on it not too long ago, and that is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. And this book has been circulating around BookTube and Bookler and Bookstagram, basically everywhere. And it's a YA contemporary about a teenage girl named Star Carter who witnesses the fatal shooting and killing of her childhood best friend Khalil. And this book they say it's inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement, and I would say, like, you know, it's very political, it's very like emotional and heart-wrenching, but it's also very, very real and very, very honest, and I loved it so much. It talks about, you know, very difficult topics, such as racism, and racism comes in all different shapes and forms, and I love how this book just explores, like, you know, systematic racism to, like, you know, microaggressions and all of that. And I loved every single one of, you know, the characters, except for, you know, the ones who are like not so great or who are not supposed to be likable. But yeah, and this book had, you know, while it had some heavy topics, it still filled me with a lot of love because of Star's family and her friends and her support system. And so yeah, I highly recommend this book if you're looking for something diverse to read, but also because just for the fact that it's such an important read, and it speaks very truthfully to our current political climate and everything that happens in real life, as, you know, it felt, you know, like a very real portrayal of life and our society. So yeah, those were all the books that I read last month. If you have read any of these books, or you want to comment down below what your thoughts are or questions, I would really appreciate it. Otherwise, I thank you for watching this video, and I hope that you have a very good day. Bye!